Hi, I'm His Lordship, the leader of the Wilderness Guardians. If you've watched past videos of mine, you may have noticed an evolution in the way I think about PKing and my various solutions on how to fix it. In the Wilderness Biography of 2012, what I consider to be my first major video about PKing, I spoke about how the wilderness itself was broken. But soon enough, I realized that in order to fix the wilderness, you have to fix PKing at large. So skip forward 2 years to my next video, Why RuneScape is Dying. And now I've expanded that issue to PKing in general. And I said that in order to fix the PKing system, we need more players to start PKing because the PKing community on its own isn't enough to keep that momentum going. Then I realized that most veteran players in RS3 and old school probably won't start PKing if they haven't been PKing already, because these are long-term players who have established habits, and you know that saying about teaching old dogs new tricks. So I turned my attention to the new player experience, because in order to get more PKs, we really have to take them from a pool of new players. So I made a movie called What Regular People Think of RuneScape, where I got 6 of my friends to play 45 minutes of RS3 and 45 minutes of old school. And there I found that old school was by far the more popular version of RuneScape. Now, I spent the last 2 years thinking about why this was. So here we are at this movie, Jagex's Biggest Mistake. Very pretentious title, but I'm willing to defend it. Now, the reason why I think this is Jagex's biggest mistake is because it saturates the timeline of RuneScape. It's been going on for years. It seems to be the elephant in the room that no one's talking about. What is it? Jagex went overboard with fantasy. They're killing RS3 one update at a time, and I worry for the future of Old School 2 if it follows in RS3's footsteps. I'll explain why. RuneScape is advertised as a medieval fantasy adventure. When I began playing in 2003, the game was about 3 parts medieval, 1 part fantasy. Now in 2016, it's about 1 part medieval and 5 parts fantasy. Maybe you don't believe me. Well, let's have a look at what was around 12 years ago when I started playing. The skills were things like mining, smithing, fishing, herb lore, cooking. Magic and prayer was there, yes, but it was considered to be the supernatural element and kind of sprinkled on as a light touch thing. And you could get on fine without using them on a day-to-day basis. But look at our modern skills. Summoning magical creatures, gathering divine energy, raiding epic dungeons full of crazy things in there. And in 2016, we're now manufacturing mechanical chin-chompers and light bulb hats. Now, even within a skill, let's have a look. I remember when fishing used to be simply casting a rod into the water and pulling back a fish. That was before players started attacking creatures made out of rock to get living minerals to use as bait. Perhaps some of you need more convincing. Let's have a look at NPCs perhaps. Sure, you had goblins and demons and ghosts in RuneScape, but the bulk of the NPCs were men and women, guards, cows, and bears. Look around Lumbridge, which is, kind of ground zero for this kind of thing. This is the oldest content in the game here. Yeah, you had some goblins and some skeletons and all that, but these were very, very simple magical creatures as well. When you look forward, you start getting, demigods and some very complex supernatural creatures that are much more heavy and intensive than those early creatures. And it kind of implies more of a supernatural element, not that skeletons are particularly natural when they're walking around in broad daylight. But I think you get my point. Even the way players behave has changed. Remember when the primary method of getting from A to B was walking? Thanks to lodestones and jewelry and other teleports, that's a thing of the past. I mean, it kind of makes distance irrelevant. And so you don't really get a sense of the exploration. So remember when you couldn't just sprout wings in the middle of the Grand Exchange? Well, I do. Remember when emotes were those awkward little dances that you could do for money, dancing for GP. Now, what are they? Epic guitar battles with flaming demons. And let's have a look at the various settlements. I was speaking just a second ago about Lumbridge, this sleepy little river town. And there's also Varrock, of course, this bustling city. But now, Prifddinas, a fucking crystal metropolis inside a giant crater inhabited by elves with some mythical voice telling you exactly where to go and what to do. Or maybe clan citadels, huge Fuck off sky castles where you can manufacture God knows what with this creature that follows you around for no particular reason. Now, I get that RuneScape has always had fantasy, but it was used sparingly. George R.R. Martin, who is the author of A Song of Ice and Fire, as you know, has always been a critic of many fantasy books that are too liberal with magic. Have a listen to what he has to say on the matter.
Fantasy requires magic of some sort. Otherwise, without magic, it's just historical fiction about history that never happened. But I think you need to be very careful about how you handle the magic and how much of it you put in. If you look at Lord of the Rings, what strikes you, and certainly struck me, is that although the world is infused with this great sense of magic, there's very little on-stage magic. You know, Gandalf is a wizard, but you don't see him. He doesn't obliterate entire armies with a word and lightning bolts from his fingers and things like that. He's got a staff that glows a little. When orcs attack, he takes out his sword and fights side by side with the other people. So you have a sense of magic, but it's kept under very tight control. And I really took that to heart when I was starting my own series. I think if you put too much magic in your fantasy, it overwhelms the plot. And it starts to make the plot nonsensical. I mean, if you do have a sorceress or a wizard who can speak a word and wipe out an army, why would you even assemble an army?
So why does the surplus of fantasy make it so bad? I claim that it's Jagex's biggest mistake. That's because it makes the world less believable. It breaks the law. Whether you want it to be the case or not, Jagex, society expects RuneScape to be more medieval and less fantasy. As a veteran player, I myself am unhappy with the balance. When I was a teenager, my imagination ran wild in Gelnor because I could suspend my disbelief and become my character. New players are robbed of that experience because the world is so unrealistic. I think of one of my favorite games of all time, Skyrim. It is immersive. You know, you can really believe that that world could exist. Sure, there were things that kind of didn't make sense and you kind of had to get away with that, you know, with video game logic, like horses that could go this way up a mountain. I mean, fine, but there is a point that you cross where you just can't do that anymore and you can't believe this world could feasibly exist. And there are a lot of comics that you yourself share on Facebook and other social media that kind of highlight all of these discrepancies in RuneScape logic. Now, Modmark, you've spoken about this before. You rightly said that you can't please everyone, and there will be many players who love the spectacle and the excess of the fantastic forces in RuneScape that I loathe so much. Who then to disappoint? I've got no real chance of convincing you with this shitty little YouTube video. But if I can't fall in love with Gelnor, someone who is creative for a living and a lover of fantasy, what chance does the rest of society have? Maud Osborne, you're the mind behind the law of the land. I love your creativity, but I disdain your crudeness. Where is the subtlety in your ideas? When you create grand concepts, you break the logic of the game. It's kind of a brick in my face. I mean, these are very, very creative pieces of content that you're giving us, but you're kind of trying to one-up yourself. There is no subtlety. You know, let's just take one update amongst hundreds and hundreds. I picked this one at random. Let's use the Dominion Tower. 16 things I can punch in the logic of the Dominion Tower straight away. If it's the largest tower in the land, why then isn't it used as an observation deck for defensive purposes? You know, the top platform is accessible from the open sky, and there is nothing stopping people from, I don't know, building a ladder or flying up there. As you know, people can now sprout wings, so why not? 2, the tower was built in 30 years, according to your law. If it could be built that quickly, then why are the other great towers and castles of RuneScape so much smaller and less sophisticated? Why have bosses never escaped this tower? It's not the strange face's job to contain them, only to keep the unworthy out. What else? Oh, yes, there's a river running right next to the building foundations. Why hasn't this eroded the foundations? Magic, you say? I don't know. You know, like, what about the sand underneath the tower? That's not magic. That should erode, and that should send the tower sideways, toppling to the ground. Or perhaps, Why would there not be any merchants at the base of the tower waiting to exploit and capitalize off the many adventurers that go there? For that matter, if it was so popular with players, shouldn't there be a town settled there to support those people? Also, why do the citizens of Gelnor think that it's okay for a person to just waltz in and revive some of the most dangerous foes from the past back into the realm? Why has nobody thought to destroy the tower or to block the tower for the safety of the realm? Also, if it's possible to bind people to buildings, as with the strange face, why wasn't this done anywhere else to fortify other very important places in Gelnor? Maybe the founder's mother, who did that magic, was uniquely powerful. So then, why don't we know more about her? Why haven't wizards tried to study this magic? If that kind of magic exists in Gelnor, why can't players create any kind of magic that resembles it? Why are wizards even busier studying runes and runescence, and not this giant magical tower? When there's such powerful magic in the realm, when someone can create something that awesome, why do the kings and queens of the realm insist on equipping guards with arrows, bows, and swords, when such magic could just obliterate them in a second? You know, like, what, in fact, you know, I'm just thinking of Faldor, what's the point of being a guard when they can pretty much die to anyone? I mean, I'd quit my job straight away, right? Also, why is the strange face made from blue rock when the mineral doesn't even exist anywhere else? Oh, it could be mithril, right? Well, if it's mithril, why isn't it used in any other architecture around the game? Mithril is a very common substance. I can also think of a couple more. Why is the tower red when the desert stone is yellow? If it's imported, wouldn't it take more than 30 years to make? Thinking about it, why doesn't any NPC even talk about this tower, which is the largest structure in the entire game? Ever. If it's so old, why hasn't it inspired architecture in the local area? Because it is an amazing building. Why don't Sunfreets drop dragon bones, or any other bones or ashes for that matter? If it's not a material beast that's made from flesh, how can normal weapons even hit it? Finally, if the tower has the ability to extract memories of severe combat from people and project them into the arena, why won't it ever project PKs that have killed me onto the floor, or that dark wizard at that circle south of Varrock that killed me when I was a level 5? Now those are issues for just one piece of content in the game. Now expand that to all of the recent NPCs, quest plots, minigames, graphics, skills and events, and you have a totally broken reality. I'm not even sure if you can fix it. Thankfully, Old School is quite faithful to the original ratio of magic to reality, though I fear it may change as they look for new content and, pick up bad habits. It's really easy to justify a new addition to the game by explaining it with magic, but that's cheap, and it breaks the world. Another point, medieval settings should be scarce in resources. What you've created is too abundant in ways to make money, earn experience, and take shortcuts. And having too many resources discourages people from investing because they are not sure if what they collect, money or levels, will hold its value. And that has so many repercussions on the economy, I don't even want to go there. It also discourages new players because if they are not familiar with the latest method of training or making money, then they'll be wasting their time. And we've already created this culture of efficiency, and that culture came about in large part to this need to one-up yourselves every time. So what's done at Jagex is reflected by the players. I'm not going to play old content because if you're going to be disrespectful of it, I'm going to be disrespectful of it. Speaking of a lack of respect for existing content, it just so happens that the oldest content, ground zero, is around Lumbridge, Varrock, Falador, where the new players are mostly playing. So the new players are saturated with old content that's become irrelevant, and it's so disconnected to what the veterans are doing. And that's a huge problem as well. And that's really going to discourage them because new players want to emulate their seniors and they can't see their seniors doing anything like mining adamant. They can't see them doing, the local quests in that area, or chopping trees. That's how I learned what to do. I would just go to Draenor and I would start casting my net to catch shrimp, and I would see people, cutting those willow logs and making fires. We'd have a bit of a chat. It was very organic, player-driven content, and you've lost that, and that for me is it. That little scene there, it captures the essence of what RuneScape's meant to be. It's meant to be driven by the players. It needs to be more sandbox rather than railroaded as you seem to be doing now. Do this quest, it's a linear line, you get from A to B Jagex's way, and that's not on. And the other aspect to that little scene of Draenor that I conjured up a moment ago was the community. I mean, we love RuneScape for its community. I don't think there are any players here that disagree. That's the strongest element of the game. Sure, you get a lot of trolls and stuff, but look at our YouTubing and streaming community and all the friends that we have and the networks that we've made over the years. That's really what keeps us going. New players are robbed of that opportunity because they're not sharing in these experiences that the veterans are playing. So you need to go back to these old areas of RuneScape, revitalize them, bring the veterans back, and I'll get onto that in a moment. To summarize, RuneScape isn't an adventure anymore. It's actually a really bad business model for Jagex as a company. There's no merit to exploring the map. Just teleport. Everything is instanced anyway, so the world map is broken. It's best described as a collection of minigames, and the world map happens to be a very, very large and lonely lobby. Now, it's easy to state a problem and much harder to offer a solution, but I'm going to try anyway. Jagex, you're not going to like it. My solution is simple, extremely difficult. Declutter RuneScape of as much of the fantastic element as possible and bring it back to believable levels, to simplicity. I know it's too late for us veterans, but restore the new player experience at least. Let them walk across the map and discover things. Let them mine rocks, smith bars, and make their own armor. Remember how armor used to come from minerals in the earth and you could see it from the ore all the way to on your body. I understand that you got to Rune and then once level 99 happened, there was nowhere to go, so you had no choice but to give it to bosses. But that's fine, but don't devalue the ore armor. That should be the center of RuneScape, and then everything higher level above that should be peripheral. Balancing's really off, and I know this game is old and there is so much to look at, so much content. How can you possibly do it? That's what I'm urging you to do. Go back to the old content, rebalance the game, make sure that everything has its place. I want there to be a reason to wear steel armor if you're a noob. Now, I'm an old school player, and it was wrong of me to speak in opposition to its release because they seem to have a winning formula. Now, I'm not just making this video to criticize RS3, though I am really disappointed in its trajectory. I'm also making it as a word of caution to the old school team. Not that I need to, because they seem to be doing such an amazing job. But I can't help but offer this warning. Please don't follow that other route and break really, really good existing content. This game was in its prime between 2005 and 2007. There is something special about that, and you know it. Hold it sacred and understand what it was. Really understand what it was. So, now, I want future players to feel that sense of accomplishment when they upgrade their armor or kill Delrith, or the first time they get to hold that rune weapon. It's a big deal. Don't go for this. Don't strive toward improving EXP rates and just satisfying veterans. It's a very, very difficult path to tread. Please be sparing with your magic in particular, and don't make the game easy. I was there for the beta testing of RS2. I remember the original purpose for the home teleport as a way for you to get out of a glitch. Don't lose sight of that. This game isn't meant to be easy. Now, I'm not asking you to go back and nerf everything. There would be an absolute revolution, but take things one step at a time. Your future content, make it more medieval, make it about the individual character. Remember, we are bound by our physiological limits, Go back to what things were like in medieval times, resource scarce. If magic is so prevalent in the realm has to reflect that, and it doesn't. There's a huge mismatch between what we do, how we appear, and what the realm is. And I just can't seem to fall in love with RS3 in the same way I fall in love with old school. And I know there are a whole bunch of very high-profile streamers and video makers who I've spoken to in private about this, but for some reason they've never made a video about the medieval element of RuneScape before. Anyway, magic has always been a central part of RuneScape. In fact, you can't say RuneScape without the word rune. But I think deep down, Jagex, you know you went too far. Ask yourself why Gelenor is so hard to fall in love with. When RuneScape was at its zenith, back in 2005 through 7, its new players were 12 to 15 years old. Kids have more active imaginations than adults. They have a greater threshold for flaws in logic and can suspend disbelief a lot easier. But even still, you're now asking too much of them. What about bringing in adults to the game? Good luck getting a working adult to start an MMO, which is, as it currently stands, a dying breed of game already in today's industry. I love RuneScape, and I myself don't have time to play it. Do you think you're going to have any kind of serious time investment from an adult if they can't fall in love with the game by the end of their first hour in Galenor? Now, I know I sound like an angry moaner, but I made this video not because I hate things, but it's because I love RuneScape and I trust Jagex. If I didn't, I wouldn't even bother making this video. So please take this in the constructive spirit that it was made, and please fix this community, the PKing community. We have been craving your attention for years. I've got a path for you. PKing will be fixed by bringing in new players. New players will be enticed into the game by rebalancing the world and scaling back the fantasy element. Give them a realm they can understand and love from the moment they step foot in it. That can only happen if you tame the magic. So that's all from me this time. As usual, I really love reading your comments and I will respond to as many of them as I can, so post below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think there's something I haven't thought about? Maybe that can be a topic for my next video. Anyway, here are some of the comments you've made from previous videos of mine. Let's take a look. Kyle Bennett was asking when the RuneScape documentary was coming out. All I know is that it's completely finished and ready to go, and it's being held at the very top levels of Jagex exec, and they're waiting for the right PR moment to launch it. I think they should release it as soon as possible because, quite frankly, it's called Celebrating 15 Years of RuneScape or something like that. Very soon it's going to become 16 years, so they don't have much time, and they're not really holding on to it for any particularly good reason. So Jagex, if you're listening, please, please, please release the documentary. It was an amazing movie. I can't wait to watch it again. Jason Bloho, you seem to have the winning suggestion for a tuna potato. Now, I really don't understand why so many people want a tuna potato. Is this going to make me sick or something? Is this going to be hilariously fail? Anyway, that's going to be one of my next recipes. But first, I'm going to take Moldy's suggestion of gnome cocktails, which will be my next cooking video out early next week. Jimbabwe, how much do I bench? I have no idea. How much does your mum weigh? She's the heaviest thing I've lifted.